11.4 is the factor theorem. What the factor theorem says, if A, B equals 0, if and only if A equals 0 or B equals 0. So for all A and B, if A and B equals 0, then one of A or B must equal 0. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yes.
All right. If and only if.
Okay.
If and only if.
Oh, I don't get it, but I'll go with it.
All right. Or you can write if and only if. That'd be like 3, but this is the abbreviation for that.
Okay.
All right. Example 1.
What, they both equal 0?
No, they both could equal 0,
Okay.
but one of them at least has to be 0, right?
Yeah.
They both could equal 0, but at least one of them have to equal 0. Yeah. All right. So, find the zeros of the function g of x is equal to 10x to the 4th minus 250x squared. Say it again. Yes. Yep. So, we have here, the first thing is we need to find the zeros of this polynomial. Two things. First of all, what is the degree of this polynomial, class? 4. That tells me that there are 4 zeros of this polynomial. If all zeros are counted separate, there are 4 zeros. What is a zero of a polynomial? If I say that, remember this is like my y, remember? So if I say y is 0 and we are solving for x's, what are we really solving for on our graph? What are we solving for? We are solving for the x-intercepts.
Oh.
So we're looking for the x-intercepts. When we are solving for 0, we're looking for the x-intercepts. Well, we learned last week how to factor this. How can I factor this? What's in common with this? 10x squared. What's remaining? 10x to the 4th, what's remaining? X squared minus 25. And that's still going to equal 0. Now let's do one more factor. Let's do one more factor. We have, bringing down my 0 equals 10x squared. What does this factor into? What is x squared minus 25? What was that?
Square root.
So we have x
Minus 5.
minus 5 and x
Plus 5.
plus 5. So we're looking for the zeros. It says that if this equals 0, what does the factor theorem say? It says if this equals 0, this has to equal 0, or this has to equal 0, or that has to equal 0, right? So you literally just pull them apart and you have 3 problems. I'll tell you the first problem and then you tell me the other ones. The first problem is 10x squared is equal to 0. And when I solve this out, I can tell you that x equals 0. I divided by 10, took the square root, x is 0. You can kind of look at it and tell you that it's 0. What's my second problem?
X minus 5 equals 0.
X minus 5 equals 0. So that one tells me that x equals 5. My last one is
X plus 5.
x plus 5. And that equals 0. So x equals
Negative 5.
-5. We have to think back before midterm. Before midterm, and it told us that if we have a graph that is an even number, what did it look like? Does anybody know what it looked like? What does it, think of it like this, if it's a square, do you have a clue? It looks like your parabolas, is right. So we know that because it's your even number, it's going to look like a parabola. All right? Now, this, hopefully, why I'm doing this is hopefully it'll help you throughout the rest of the chapter. We're going to work with this concept throughout the rest of the chapter. However, it looks like a parabola. And what did I say these zeros are? These zeros are the x-intercepts. So we know that one's at 0, and just put dots, just put dots there. One's at 5, and I'm just going to say that this is 5. And then one's at -5. It's going to be some of you are going to get this right away and some might not. The thing is, how many, this I will tell you, first of all, how many zeros were we finding? 4. We have 3. Does anybody have a clue or guess where the fourth one is? 0, because this one has 2 of them. There are 2 at 0. If something is double, it bounces. So what happens, and we're going to kind of look at is this open up or open down for the parabola? It opens up. So it comes through -5, it bounces at 0, and then comes back up.
So
that's what the graph kind of looks like. Now, I will tell you that your calculator, your graphing calculator, it's going to be hard to kind of see it, but I'm going to try to show you y equals the best that we can. I'm going to put in 10x to the 4th minus 250x squared. Yep. And I'm going to graph it. Now, the thing that you can't see is this right here, because it's so close, really. I don't know if you can see. What it does is it comes through, and it's so close that you can't even see that it actually hits 0. It comes down and it goes back through. But this is the thing that you can't really see unless we zoom in. All right, so do you all agree that you can see the 5 and -5? Yeah, you can see these two, right? The only thing you can't see is this. So I'm actually going to change my window, and I'm going to shrink it down so that we can look just at this, so we can just see that I'm telling the truth, that I'm not just making it up. So see how this part right there, see what it looks like? This, and this right here is between 1 and, so this between 1 and -1 is what it looks like. Because this is at 1, this is -1, and that's 1. Because I changed my window. Alright, but because it happens so quickly, when you zoom out, if I go back to my 6 and -6, you cannot see that. And I don't know if I shrink down my y's if you can see it. If I go to -1 to 1. Yeah, so you can't see it there either. Still can't see it. So you really need to shrink it to here to see it. But just so you can see that your grapher can do it, but you have to really play with it to be able to do that. But your zeros that you're finding are your intercepts. All right, let's do another one. Example 2. Factor by graphing. We have here 2x cubed minus 6x squared minus 8x equals 0. So what we are doing, and this is the concept, these are my zeros, remember, these were my factors, so we're going to be going backwards. And hopefully you see this, when this was my 0, what was my factor? X plus 5. When my 0 was 5, my factor was x minus 5. When my 0 was 0, my factor was an x. So now what we're going to do is we're going to find where the x-intercepts are. So we're going to graph it. Yep.
Are you always going to be looking for 4 zeros?
Nope. How many zeros does this have? First of all, what's the degree? 3. So how many zeros do we have? 3. Your amount of zeros are the same as your degree. But some of them can be double, but they're always going to be the same. Okay? Alright, so let's put that into our calculator. So I'm going to clear that out, and I'm going to put 2x cubed minus 6x squared minus 8x. And then I'm going to graph it. I can't quite see on mine, so actually I'm going to change my window, and I'm going to shrink my window into 1, 2, 3. I'm going to go to my x as being -3. Whoops, -3. So I can see it, and we'll go to 5 just to see if that helps. So, do you see that this one is -1? It looks like it crosses at 0 and 4. So my guess is -1, 0, and 4. Does everyone see how I'm guessing by looking at those graphs? It's where it hits. Now, if you are guessing, you have to make sure that it's right. So what does it mean? What does -1 mean to be the factor of this? It has to equal 0 if I plug it in. So we better check to make sure. So I have 2 times -1 cubed minus my 6 times my -1 squared, and I'm putting parentheses if you're not looking up, minus 8 parentheses -1. That equals 0. So I know that's a factor. This one, 0, I can tell, hopefully you all can see that that is, because this is 0 minus 0 minus 0, that's a factor. And then let's check 4. Really quickly, I can recall it up and change those 1s to 4s. On 0. The other thing that I just remembered that I forgot, and if you can either do it that way, or you can go to your table step, or your table, so second table, which is your graph. You can also look at here. It says 4, y is 0, 0 is 0, and your -1 is 0. So at your table, it also told me that they're all zeros. So what does that mean? What is my factors? If it was -1, what is my factor? Look it back up here. When it was -5, my factor was x plus 5. If it's -1, what's my factor? X plus 1. Because remember, you have to be able to set it to 0 and solve it out. So it's what? -1 plus what gives me 0. So what about 0? What do you think 0 is? Well, it does exist. It's just x. And the last one is 4. X minus 4. Now, This is the answer right there, but because of what we're used to seeing, I'm going to rewrite it to what we're used to seeing, and we're used to seeing x plus 1, and then x minus 4. I would never mark this one wrong, but I personally like to see it like this. If I were to factor this out, if I were to multiply this out, I should get close to this. Now the only problem is, do you guys see what we're going to run into a problem? The only thing we're not going to get back is that 2. And so there probably is a 2 out here that we're not getting, because 2 tells us how we are, if it's opening wider or narrower. So that's the only thing. When you factor by graphing, you're not going to get the coefficients necessarily. So there's probably a 2 that we could have pulled out. By looking at it, we can tell that 2 we would have pulled out. So if we pull out that 2 right there, that's going to be really our, because 2 times this gives me that. So 2 times 2x times x gives me x cubed. So I bet you now if I multiply that out, it's going to give me that factor. Now, this is the part where you might not always get. Not if it says to factor by graphing, you'd probably have it. You would probably not have all of the things. Oh, that'd be awesome. All right, now going to the next one, and this next one helps you kind of know that too. X cubed, or x, example 3. Sorry, x cubed. Example 3. Another one, factor by graphing. 3x cubed minus 4x squared minus 27x minus 20. All right. So the first thing you have to do is we have to graph it. So we put that into our calculator. So I'm putting in 3x squared minus 4. Oh, thank you. So 3x cubed minus 4x squared minus 27x minus 20. It's cubed. What is it going to look like? Anybody remember what it's going to look like? The snake, right? It's going to look like that snake. And how many zeros are we looking for? 3. All right. And I will tell you, one problem on your test is giving you an equation and asking you how many zeros there are. That is one of the problems on the test. So we have here, hopefully you notice we have, oops, this is my 0, or that's my x-intercept, so that's 0, 1, 2. Do you see how it's almost at 2 but not quite? So I know we have here, this one looks like it's at -1. This one looks like it crosses before the -2. And then this one over here we have 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's our snake, so it goes like this. Now, remember before, you have to make sure that that is 4 and -1. So I'm actually going to go to my table step. If I look at my table step, at -1 it's 0. And at 4 it's 0. So I know these two are my zeros. So my zeros are -1, 4, and between -2 and -1. What is my factor for negative 1? X plus 1. What is my factor for 4? X minus 4. Oops, I forgot my 1. X minus 4. We're not for sure about this one yet because it's a fraction. We don't know what it is yet, so we don't know what my third one is. Do you all agree that that's so far what we know?
Yeah.
Let's FOIL this part out. Let's FOIL this out and see what we already have. We have x times x gives me x squared. X times negative 4 gives me negative 4x. 1 times x gives me x. 1 times negative 4 gives me negative 4. Simplifying, I have x minus 3x, x squared minus 3x minus 4. I want to know what I have to multiply by to give me 3x cubed minus 4x squared minus 27x minus 20. So I'm asking myself, what can I multiply this by to give me this? This number, remember, this number and the first number has to give me this number. So this is 3x. The last number always is from here. This number and this number. So positive 5. So let's check it out just to make sure we're right. We have x squared times 3x gives me 3x cubed. X squared and 5 gives me 5x squared. Negative 3x and 3x gives me negative 9x squared. 3x and your 5 gives me negative 15x. And then my last one, I have negative 4 and my 3x is negative 12x. And then we have negative 20. Combining like terms, I have 3x cubed. My x squareds, I have negative 4x squared. And here we have negative 27x and then negative 20. So that did work out. So what is my final answer? My final answer, because we're factoring, my final answer is x plus 1, x minus 4, and 3x plus 5. That is the factors. Looking at here, hopefully you guys can tell me what my zeros are. If they asked you what are your zeros, you should be able to tell me the zeros. The zeros are negative 1, 4, and this one's a hard one, but can you do it? If this is set to 0, what would be my first thing? I would subtract 5 and then divide by 3. This is an important step, ladies and gentlemen, because this is my last thing I have to show you. This is important to be able to see how I got from here to here. If this was equal to 0, I would have subtracted 5, and then I would have divided by 3. So when I give you, I'm going to give you, the next example is going to give you a fraction. To find your factor, the number that's on the bottom goes in front of your x, and this number is here. Do you see that? Because if this would have been equal, 3x plus 5 is equal to 0, I would have subtracted 5. 3x is equal to negative 5, then I would have divided by 3. So we're going to go from here to there, next example. Just one last one. It's really short, but I want to make sure you got it. Example 4. Example 4 says, find an equation for a polynomial function with zeros, 0, -2, and 2/3. So the first thing you have to know, because it's a polynomial function, all you're going to do is go P of x equals, and then you're going to tell me the factors. What three things are your factors there? So I want you to take a moment and see if you think of what do you think the factors are to get those zeros. All right. I think there's two of them that are kind of hard, at least at first, to think about. And the first one is the 0, because you guys might not be used to this. So, Paul, you know what it is? It's just x, is right. It is just x. If you wanted, you could say x minus 0 if that helps you. But it is just x. The next one, Jordan, do you know what that one is? It is x plus 2. And then the last one might be a little bit difficult, but hopefully you guys got it. 3x minus 2. Remember, if you need to set it equal to 0 and solve it out. So the first, remember that you have is you're putting it, you have your x kind of, so you would have 2/3, and you're doing your x. What you're doing it out, so you're multiplying by 3. So you have 2 is equal to your 3x. Then you would subtract your 2. So then you would have 0 is equal to 3x minus 2. So you're working it out backwards to get that if you have to. Do you see how you can get that, working it out? All right. Your assignment is page 627, 628, which is 11-4, numbers 1 through 25. I'm going to give you a moment to start numbers 1 through 3, and then I'm going to make sure you guys understand how to do this. So after I take attendance, I will come back with you.